Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly lucrative, slightly contrarian, and honestly, just totally fascinating mechanics behind one of the most successful retail giants on the planet. If you've ever found yourself wondering how a giant warehouse, the ones with the bare cement floors and mountains of bulk goods, managed to quietly take over the retail world, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Here is exactly how we're going to deconstruct this $254 billion engine today. We'll be looking at 1. The retail empire, 2. The membership business model, 3. Ruthless operational efficiency, 4. The supply chain secrets, 5. The cynical leadership strategy, and finally 6. A blueprint for retail success. All right, let's just jump right in. Part 1. The retail empire, a giant built on bulk. Let's start off by looking at the sheer massive scale of Costco today, before we rewind a bit to see how this incredibly simple, no-frills warehouse concept literally took over the globe. $254 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That staggering figure represents Costco's reported net sales for fiscal year 2025. This massive economic footprint is backed by 128 million cardholders across hundreds of international locations. I mean, it's already the 5th largest general retailer in the US, and its global presence just keeps on growing. So, looking at the timeline, the story really gets going when founder James Sinegal, who actually cut his teeth under warehouse retail pioneer Saul Price, teamed up with a Seattle attorney named Jeff Brotman. They opened their very first Costco up in Seattle back in 1983. And from literally day one, they stuck to this highly disciplined, almost obsessive strategy: bulk inventory, finite item selection, and extreme value-driven pricing. They steadily expanded, merged with their old rival Price Club in 1993, went international shortly after that, and eventually launched their absolute powerhouse of a private label, Kirkland Signature, in the year 2000. Moving on to Section 2, the membership business model, less is more. Now here's where things get really interesting. Let's look at the totally counterintuitive mechanics behind Costco's profit engine. In traditional retail, conventional wisdom says you should give the customer endless choices. Costco does the exact opposite. While a massive competitor, think Walmart, might stock over 100,000 different products, a Costco warehouse holds only about 4,000 stock-keeping units, or SKUs. It sounds crazy, right? But by drastically limiting your choices, Costco dramatically increases the sales volume for each individual product they do carry. This gives them unparalleled buying power with vendors, insanely fast inventory turnover, and just total control over what's on the floor. And then we have to talk about the pricing. Traditional apparel and retail brands typically aim for, a 30 to 50% profit margin on their goods. But founder James Sinegal was fiercely adamant about protecting the customer's wallet. He put a strict rule in place. No branded item gets marked up more than 14%, and no private label Kirkland item more than 15%. Because they are literally capping their own product profits, it essentially forces the company to find its actual profits somewhere else. And here is that actual profit engine. Because of those razor-thin markups on the merchandise, the recurring membership fee becomes the lifeblood of the whole company. It's this incredibly stable stream of income that generated a mind-blowing $5.1 billion in 2025 alone. Members happily fork over this fee because the low margins we were just talking about basically guarantee that the savings will easily cover the upfront cost of the card. Which brings us to Section 3, ruthless operational efficiency, stripping the frills. To actually survive with such low retail margins, Costco has to execute operational stringency on a level that most businesses couldn't even stomach. As Sinegal once pointed out, selling stuff at low prices is the easy part, but actually making a profit doing it, that requires slashing overhead costs absolutely everywhere. Costco spends literally $0 on advertising. Nothing. That saves an estimated 2% annually right off the bat. They don't even give you shopping bags. You just grab whatever vendor shipping boxes are lying around. The warehouses have bare cement floors, super basic signage. I mean, Sinegal himself even worked out of a tiny alcove on a folding chair and answered his own phone, just because he refused to hire a secretary. That is some serious commitment. And this culture of efficiency, it extends right down to the packaging itself. Every tiny detail matters to them. Take the shape of a cashew nut container, for example. By simply rethinking that shape from round to square, or by optimizing exactly how a pallet is stacked, it means fewer trucks on the road and way easier shelf replenishment. These tiny incremental operational tweaks end up saving millions in transportation, warehousing, and handling costs. All right, part 4, the supply chain secrets, mastering operations. Let's shift over to the physical supply chain and see how all this builds into an absolutely undeniable competitive advantage. Costco is basically a masterclass in operations management because they're buying in such massive, frankly, absurd volumes. They hold immense leverage. If a supplier, and we're talking even giants like Starbucks or massive frozen food vendors, if they give a competitor a better deal, Costco will aggressively rethink that partnership. They fully expect their suppliers to work just as hard as they do to strip out the excess costs. Let's look at a really cool, concrete example of this supply chain magic in action. Take wine merchant Cameron Hughes, a major Costco supplier. He doesn't actually own a single grape or vineyard. Nope. Instead, he acts as a virtual company. He buys raw, ready-made wine directly from Californian makers. Then he manages the filtering, the blending, bottling, and labeling, and finally packages and ships it straight to Costco. This is a brilliant illustration of disintermediation, basically just cutting out the middleman. By bulk purchasing those raw inputs and acting as a virtual factory, Hughes completely removes traditional distributors from the equation, stripping out a massive amount of overhead. He adds value by creating these unique, high-quality blends, but he's able to provide it at a shockingly low price point for Costco members. It's a total win-win. Moving into Section 5, the cynical leadership strategy, the human element. Because, and this is the crucial point here, absolutely none of this operational perfection works without the people behind it. Senegal famously capped his own salary at $350,000. Now, when you consider that the industry standard for Fortune CEOs in his era was easily north of $1 million, this was practically unheard of. He firmly believed that massive executive wage gaps cause huge psychological damage to the average employee. He argued that it fosters this deep perception of injustice, which just naturally leads to people slacking off or eventually quitting. But he didn't just cap his own pay, he actively elevated everybody else's. Back in 2005, Costco's average hourly wage was $17 an hour. That was a massive 42% higher than their closest rival. Wall Street analysts actually ripped into him for this, heavily criticizing him for being too generous to his workers. But you know what? Cynical didn't care. In fact, when he found out the company was accidentally paying 88% of his workforce's healthcare expenses instead of the 90% he had promised, he instantly reimbursed the employees by putting company stock directly into their 401ks. Just incredible leadership. Wall Street might have hated it at the time, but this strategy is just brilliant business. Treating your employees ethically isn't just, a nice thing to do. It is highly profitable. Research actually shows that thriving employees are 32% less likely to quit. By paying well above the market rate, Costco gets to enjoy extremely low turnover and drastically reduced employee theft rates. And that translates directly into a much more productive workforce and a noticeably friendlier customer experience when you're actually out there on the warehouse floor. And finally, Section 6, Blueprint for Retail Success, Lessons for Leaders. Let's pull all this together and synthesize these operational and human pillars into some actionable takeaways, whether you're studying business or managing your own team. First up, every single decision in your value chain absolutely has to be justified by how it helps the customer. Whether you're rethinking the shape of your packaging or deciding to own parts of your supply chain, the end goal always has to be the same: increasing the tangible benefit and quality delivered to the consumer while simultaneously shrinking the cost to get it there. Leaders really need to sit down and ask themselves some fundamental questions. Do your employees actually feel valued? Have you overcomplicated your business by offering way too many choices instead of just doing a few things perfectly? Are you asserting yourself and demanding the absolute best from your suppliers? And crucially, do you actually believe in what you sell? There's this famous interview where Senegal held up a private label cotton dress shirt, just marveling at the fact that it costs $12.99 at Costco, but would easily run you $50 at a high-end department store. He was literally obsessed with his own product's quality and value. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. In a modern business world that is so incredibly obsessed with complex algorithms, endless product variations, and squeezing every single cent out of the workforce, is it possible that the ultimate secret to building a $254 billion empire is actually remarkably simple? Maybe, just maybe, it's about doing the absolute basics, taking care of your people, stripping out the frills, and treating the customer fairly, better than anyone else in the world. Something to think about the next time you're pushing an oversized cart down those giant cement aisles.